When Arav was born, I held him in my arms and promised I'd give him everything, even if life gave me nothing. After his father died, I raised him alone. I skipped meals so he could have tuition. I worked double shifts so he could go to a good school. I gave up love, social life, and sleep because my world was wrapped up in his small hands. So when he came to me, smiling in that shy, nervous way, and said, "Mom, I want you to meet someone," my heart fluttered. He looked at me the way his father used to, with hope. Her name was Aisha. She was beautiful, polished, and always said the right things. "Auntie, you raised such a good man." She'd smile. Her family was well off, influential, even, but they were warm, or at least they pretended to be. "I'm so happy for you." I told him that night, and I meant it. For a while, everything felt like a dream. Invitations were designed, dates were fixed, and our small house buzzed with excitement. But as the days passed, the small cracks started to show. The first time I felt it was at the ring ceremony planning meeting. We were gathered around the table at Aisha's house, her mother, Nasreen, leading everything like a CEO. "I think we'll have the engagement at Taj Palace," she announced, "and obviously the catering will be from Marigold Events. We don't want a local touch, right?" I looked up. Actually, Arev's father proposed to me in front of that old temple. I thought maybe we could. Nasreen cut me off with a smile too sharp to be kind. "Oh, so sweet, but don't worry, we'll keep something simple for the temple people." I sat back, embarrassed. That was the first time I felt like an outsider in my own son's life. Aisha, too, had changed subtly. She stopped calling me Mom, not that she ever really had. Auntie now felt cold, distant. Once, I offered her a family heirloom bangles that had belonged to my mother-in-law. "These are pure gold," I said, unwrapping the velvet cloth. "Every bride in our family has worn these on her wedding day." She barely glanced at them. "Oh, these are very traditional," she said. "Maybe I'll just wear something modern instead. Diamonds go better with my lehenga." It stung. But I smiled. I told myself, she's young, it's her choice. I said nothing when they rejected the priest we've known for 20 years. Said nothing when they changed the guest list behind my back. Said nothing when Nasreen laughed at the idea of a haldi ceremony at your place. But silence has a price. And one day I paid it. It was late, maybe 11 p.m., when I went to Aisha's house to drop off some decorations. I was about to knock on the door when I heard Nasreen's voice through the open window. "Once she's married, Arav will do what we say. That boy's soft, easily molded, and once he moves to Canada, that mother of his will be stuck here like the village ghost she is." My chest tightened. I froze. Village ghost, train the boy. I pulled out my phone. My hands shook as I pressed record. My heart raced, but I didn't move. I stood there, listening to every word, every cruel sentence, the mask falling off completely. When it ended, I walked home, clutching the phone like a blade. The next morning, I made tea and waited for Araf to wake up. He walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Morning, Ma. Everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. "I need to talk to you." I played the recording. He listened, silent. When it ended, he looked at me with disbelief. "Ma, you recorded her." His voice cracked. "I had to. You wouldn't have believed me otherwise." He stood up, pacing. This could be fake. Maybe you're misunderstanding. Maybe it's just stress. You've always been critical of Aisha." I welcomed her. I snapped, voice rising. I stayed quiet when she insulted our traditions, when she ignored me, when she called me old-fashioned. I never said a word, but now they're planning to send you away, to cut me off like I'm some stain on their designer lives. "Stop it." Arav yelled. We both froze. He had never raised his voice at me before. He grabbed his coat. "I need time to think." He left. He didn't call. He didn't come back. 4 days passed. I sat with untouched food, unanswered texts, and a heart too heavy to carry. Then, on the 5th day, I got a message from a friend. "Did you hear? The wedding's cancelled." I stared at the screen, numb. It wasn't me who cancelled it. It was Aisha. She posted a message that evening, a tearful photo and a caption. "Sometimes, love isn't enough." I was made to feel small, unwelcome, and unloved in my own future home. I had to walk away from my sanity. "Please respect my privacy." Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. People called me controlling, jealous, manipulative. No one asked me what really happened. I sat on the floor, surrounded by unopened wedding gifts and marigold garlands that had started to dry at the edges. A single bangles box lay beside me, still wrapped in gold foil, the heirloom no one wanted. My phone buzzed. Again, another message, so sorry to hear what happened, but I always thought you were too strict for a modern daughter-in-law. Poor Aisha, that video made me cry. Maybe you should have stepped back and let the young people live their life. Message after message. Comment after comment. Judgment, pity, whispers. Aisha's social media post had done its job well. A carefully crafted image of a soft-spoken, heartbroken woman, forced to cancel her own wedding to escape her toxic future mother-in-law. I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, numb. I went to the market the next morning and felt the shift immediately. Women who once stopped to greet me now looked away. One even crossed the street. Sharma auntie told me she threw her future daughter-in-law out of the house. I overheard at the flower stall. Apparently she refused to let her wear Western clothes after marriage. Someone added, "Old generation mentality," said another, shaking her head. I felt their words like needles against my skin. I clenched my teeth and walked home, every step heavier than the last. But the worst wound of all hadn't come from strangers. It came from my own son. Arav had gone completely silent. No message, no apology, nothing. He had disappeared behind a wall of shame, doubt, and embarrassment. Maybe he believed I'd ruined the wedding. Maybe he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Or maybe he was just a boy who couldn't face the fact that the woman he loved had turned him against the woman who raised him. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room for hours, watching old childhood videos of Arav, his first birthday, his first school play, the time he won the science fair and ran to hug me before anyone else. When did that little boy stop seeing me? I remembered the bruises I hid when I used to work double shifts. The times I stayed up all night sewing his uniforms. The nights I sat by the window, waiting for him to come home from college just so I could warm up his food. And now, I was nothing more than a villain in someone else's story. A line in a caption, a warning to others. But pain, a real pain, has a way of turning into something else, resolve. One evening, I sat down with my tea, cold and forgotten, and opened my drawer. I pulled out the file I had kept quietly, screenshots of conversations, messages, call logs, proof that Aisha and her family had been planning something far from innocent. There were texts from her cousin, bragging about how easy it would be to move Arav to Canada once the marriage was done, mentions of a secret profile she had on a Canadian matrimonial site, screenshots of her chats mocking our simple lifestyle, and of course the recording, the one I had played for Arav. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. I didn't want to ruin Aisha. I didn't want to embarrass Arav. All I wanted was to reclaim my dignity. My side of the story, the one no one had asked for. I looked in the mirror that night and didn't see a bitter woman. I saw a mother, a woman who had been quiet too long, a woman who was done watching the world paint her as the villain. I took a deep breath, opened a new page on my laptop, and began to write. You've heard her story, now hear mine. I raised my son alone, with every ounce of strength and love I had. When he brought home Aisha, I welcomed her with open arms, until I realized that their love was a transaction in someone else's game. I poured it all out, not in rage, not in cruelty, but in clarity. The story of a woman whose silence was mistaken for guilt. And as I typed, my hands stopped trembling. I had nothing to fear anymore, because I knew what was coming next. And it wouldn't be loud, it wouldn't be dramatic. It would be simple, and it would be true. They say time heals all wounds, but in truth, time only teaches you how to carry them without flinching. By the second week after the wedding was cancelled, the damage had been done. My character was shredded across WhatsApp groups, family circles, and social media posts I was too afraid to read. I had been cast as the overbearing mother who drove her son's fiancé away, but I didn't want pity. I wanted truth, so I printed everything I had, screenshots, the call recording, the photos. I wrote a letter, not an emotional outburst, but a calm, factual account of what had happened. I addressed it not just to Arav, but to a handful of others, our close family, a few of Aisha's extended relatives I trusted, and the head of the local wedding council Aisha's mother often bragged about belonging to. I sealed the envelopes and dropped them into the postbox myself. No drama, no confrontation. Just truth, quietly sent out into the world like seeds on the wind. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, the silence was suffocating, but I held my ground. On the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Arav. His eyes were swollen, his hair unkempt. He looked nothing like the confident young man who once believed the world would bend to his will. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice shaking. I stepped aside wordlessly. He sat on the old sofa, the one where he used to fall asleep doing homework. "I read everything," he said, not meeting my eyes, the texts, the call, the messages from her cousin. I said nothing. "I feel like such a fool," he whispered. "I let her get into my head. I let them talk about you like you were a burden, and I believed it. Even when you showed me the truth, his voice broke. "I didn't protect you." I sat beside him gently. My voice was steady, not cold. "I didn't raise you to protect me. I raised you to think for yourself, but I also raised you to recognize truth when it stares you in the face." He finally looked up. "Can you forgive me? I already have." And I had, because I hadn't fought for my pride. I had fought for him to see me again. Not as an obstacle, not as a villain, but as the woman who stood by him when the world didn't care who he was. He stayed that night. We talked until 2 a.m., not just about Aisha, but everything, his guilt, my pain. The invisible wall that had grown between us over the years. It finally cracked. 2 days later, Aisha quietly deleted her emotional post. No apology, no explanation, and just like that, the tides began to turn. A relative called and muttered, "I think we owe you an apology, Babhai." The neighbor who once crossed the road now offered me sweets and a nervous smile. Even the wedding committee removed Nasreen from their next event, citing conflict of interest, but I didn't gloat. Revenge, I had learned, wasn't about shouting the loudest. It was about holding your ground when the world tries to move you. About speaking the truth when silence is easier. About knowing who you are and refusing to let others write your story. In the weeks that followed, Arav found himself again. He picked up his pieces, found a new job, and slowly began healing. We both did. One evening, as we had chai on the balcony, he turned to me and said, "I don't think I was ready for marriage. Not really." I smiled. "Most people aren't. That's why you marry someone who keeps you grounded, not someone who cuts your roots." He nodded, understanding finally blooming behind his eyes. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, I realized something. The wedding was never meant to happen. Not because of fate or drama or karma, but because some stories have to end before they can destroy the people in them. And mine was just beginning again, stronger, quieter, and finally, mine to tell.